Black Waitress helps a boy speak for the first time, and what his millionaire dad does stuns everyone. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked parking lot of Sunrise Diner, where dreams came to die over lukewarm coffee and yesterday's pie. Jade Williams wiped her hands on her apron for the 100th time that morning, the familiar weight of exhaustion settling into her bones like an old friend she couldn't shake. At 24, Jade had been serving coffee and hope in equal measure at this roadside diner for 3 years. Her smile was genuine, even when her feet screamed in protest from the double shifts she pulled to keep the lights on in her tiny apartment. The regulars knew her story: dropped out of college when her grandmother got sick, stayed to take care of family, and somehow never found her way back to the dreams she tucked away like old photographs. "Table 6 needs a refill," barked Mike, the perpetually grumpy cook whose personality matched the burnt edges of his hash browns. Jade grabbed the coffee pot, its familiar weight comforting in her hands, and glanced toward the corner booth. That's when she saw them. A man sat rigid in the vinyl booth, his expensive suit looking as out of place as a diamond in a coal mine. Everything about him screamed money, from his perfectly styled hair to the Rolex that caught the morning light. But it was his eyes that made Jade pause. They held a kind of desperate exhaustion that no amount of money could cure. Beside him sat a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with the same dark hair and sharp features. The child's hands moved constantly, stacking sugar packets, arranging silverware, dismantling and rebuilding a small tower of syrup bottles with the precision of an architect. His movements were rhythmic, almost musical, but his eyes never met anyone else's. "That's the rich guy with the broken kid," whispered Sarah, another waitress, as she passed by with a tray of steaming plates. "Been coming in for 2 weeks now. Kid don't talk, just makes messes. Gives me the creeps." Jade felt a familiar pang in her chest. She'd heard those words before, about another child who'd been labeled difficult and broken. Her cousin Marcus had been the same way, brilliant, beautiful, and completely misunderstood by a world that demanded he fit into boxes that were never meant for him. "He's not broken," Jade murmured, more to herself than to Sarah. "He's just different." She approached the table with careful steps, noting how the boy's shoulders tensed when she drew near. The man, she'd heard someone call him Mr. Rhodes, looked up with eyes that held a mixture of hope and resignation that broke her heart. "Good morning," Jade said softly, her voice carrying the warmth that had comforted countless customers over the years. "I'm Jade. Can I start you gentlemen off with some coffee?" The man nodded curtly. "Black. And?" He glanced at his son, who was now arranging the syrup bottles in a perfect line. "Chocolate milk for Oliver." "But he might not." "I'll bring it in a blue cup," Jade interrupted gently, noticing how the boy's hands stilled for just a moment. "Blue's a good color for chocolate milk, don't you think?" For the first time, Oliver's eyes flicked up to meet hers. It was brief, like a bird landing on a branch before taking flight, but it was there. A connection, fragile as spun glass. As Jade walked away, she caught fragments of whispered conversations from other tables. The gossip mill at Sunrise Diner ran more efficiently than the coffee machine. "Heard he's some kind of tech millionaire. Poor kid looks like he's got problems. Money can't fix everything, I suppose. Bet he's divorced. Rich guys always are." Jade tuned out the chatter, focusing instead on the careful ritual of preparing Oliver's chocolate milk. She'd learned with Marcus that the little things mattered most: the temperature of the milk, the color of the cup, the way you set it down without making too much noise. When she returned to the table, Oliver was building something elaborate with the sugar packets, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration. His father watched with the expression of someone witnessing a miracle he couldn't quite believe in. "Here you go, sweetheart," Jade said, setting the blue cup down gently beside Oliver's creation. She noticed he'd built what looked like a small fort, complete with walls and towers. "That's quite an impressive castle you've got there." Oliver's hand stilled. For a moment, the diner seemed to hold its breath. "It's not a castle," his father said quietly, apologetically. "He doesn't really." But Jade was already kneeling beside the booth, bringing herself to Oliver's eye level. She studied his sugar packet creation with the seriousness of an art critic examining a masterpiece. "You're absolutely right," she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "It's not a castle at all. It's a city, isn't it? With neighborhoods and, is that a bridge?" Oliver's eyes darted to hers again, this time staying a moment longer. His hands moved carefully, adjusting one of the sugar packets. Then, so quietly that Jade almost missed it, he hummed a soft, melodic sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him. His father's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. In 3 years of visits to specialists, therapists, and experts, no one had ever gotten Oliver to respond to their presence, much less engage with them. "Would you like to order breakfast?" Jade asked, her voice steady despite the flutter of excitement in her chest. "We have pancakes today. Really good ones." The man, Ethan Rhodes, she'd learned from his credit card, nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving his son. "Pancakes sound perfect." As Jade walked back to the kitchen, she felt the weight of 24 pairs of eyes following her. The other staff members had noticed something different about the interaction, though they couldn't quite put their finger on what. "What's your secret?" asked Tom, the short-order cook who'd been working at the diner since before Jade was born. "I've been watching that kid for weeks. He's never looked at anyone like that." Jade smiled, remembering the countless hours she'd spent with Marcus, learning that patience was a language all its own. "No secret," she said, tying her apron a little tighter. "Sometimes people just need someone to see them." Back at the corner booth, Ethan Rhodes sat in stunned silence, watching his son carefully rebuild his sugar packet city. For the first time in months, Oliver wasn't fidgeting with anxiety. He was creating, building, imagining. And for the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, his son wasn't as lost as everyone had told him. The morning sun climbed higher, casting new shadows across the diner floor, and Jade Williams went back to work, unaware that she just set in motion a chain of events that would change 3 lives forever. In the kitchen, she carefully poured batter onto the griddle, already planning something special for the quiet boy with the brilliant mind and the father who loved him enough to keep trying, even when the world told him to give up. The pancakes would be perfect. They had to be. Because sometimes, hope came disguised as breakfast, served by a waitress who understood that being different wasn't the same as being broken. Jade stood at the griddle, watching the golden batter bubble and dance on the hot surface. Most people saw pancakes as just breakfast, but Jade saw possibilities. She'd learned this trick with Marcus during those long afternoons when words felt too heavy and the world too loud. Sometimes, imagination was the bridge between silence and sound. "Order up for table 6. She called to herself, stacking 3 perfectly round pancakes onto a white plate. But instead of heading straight to the table, she made a quick detour to the supply closet, emerging with a bottle of chocolate syrup and a small bowl of whipped cream. The diner had grown quieter, as if the other customers sensed something important was about to happen. Even Mike had stopped his usual grumbling and was pretending to clean the grill while watching the corner booth. Oliver was still arranging his sugar packets when Jade approached, but now they formed what looked like a small village. His father sat frozen, afraid to move or speak, as if any sudden motion might shatter whatever fragile magic was happening. "Breakfast is served," Jade announced softly, setting the plate down in front of Oliver. But these weren't ordinary pancakes anymore. With practiced hands, Jade began to transform them. She drizzled chocolate syrup in gentle curves, creating ears and tails. A dollop of whipped cream became a fluffy tail, another became a round belly. Within moments, the stack of pancakes had become a family of animals, a bunny on top, a bear in the middle, and a dog at the bottom. "Look at that," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "They're having a pancake party. The bunny's the lookout, the bear's the protector, and the dog." She paused, studying Oliver's face. "What do you think the dog is doing?" Oliver's hands, which had been moving constantly since they'd arrived, suddenly stilled. His eyes moved from the pancake animals to Jade's face, then back to the plate. Something shifted in his expression, a spark of recognition, of delight. Then, something extraordinary happened. Oliver giggled. The sound was soft, barely more than a whisper, but it cut through the diner like a bell. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Even the ancient jukebox in the corner seemed to quiet down. Ethan's hand trembled as he set down his coffee cup. In 7 years of fatherhood, through countless therapy sessions, specialist appointments, and sleepless nights, he'd never heard his son laugh. Not once. "The dog is playing," Oliver whispered, his voice so quiet that Jade had to lean closer to hear him. His small finger pointed to the whipped cream tail. "He's happy." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. His son had spoken. Not just sounds or humming, but actual words. Complete thoughts. After years of silence, Oliver had found his voice over a plate of pancake animals. Jade felt her heart swell, but she kept her expression calm and encouraging. She'd learned with Marcus that too much excitement could sometimes overwhelm and shut down the connection. "He does look happy," she agreed, carefully cutting off a small piece of the pancake dog. "Would you like to try a bite? Maybe he tastes like vanilla and sunshine." Oliver nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He took the fork from Jade's hand, his movements careful and deliberate. When he bit into the pancake, his eyes widened with surprise and pleasure. "More," he said, clearer this time. "More, please." The word hung in the air like a miracle. Sarah, who had been wiping down tables nearby, dropped her cloth. Tom stuck his head out from the kitchen, his eyes wide with disbelief. Even the regular customers had stopped eating to stare. But Jade only had eyes for Oliver. She cut another piece, this time from the bear. "Here you go, sweetheart. The bear tastes like adventures and warm hugs." Oliver took the bite, chewed thoughtfully, then looked up at Jade with eyes that seemed to hold all the words he'd been saving up for years. "Thank you," he whispered. "The animals are nice." Ethan's vision blurred. He gripped the edge of the table, overwhelmed by the simple impossibility of what he was witnessing. 3 years of the most expensive specialists in the country, and a waitress at a roadside diner had accomplished what none of them could. "How?" he managed to ask, his voice thick with emotion. Jade looked at him with understanding eyes. "Sometimes," she said softly, "we just need someone to meet us where we are, instead of where everyone thinks we should be." Oliver was now carefully separating the pancake bunny from the stack, examining its chocolate syrup ears with scientific precision. "Bunny has long ears," he observed. "For listening." "That's right," Jade said. "Bunnies are very good listeners. Just like some people." The diner slowly came back to life around them, but the magic of the moment lingered. Ethan watched his son eat breakfast and actually speak, about pancake animals and sugar packet cities. For the first time in years, the future felt possible. When Oliver had finished every last crumb, he looked up at Jade with a shy smile. Will you make more animals tomorrow?" Jade's heart melted. "I'd love to, sweetheart. What kind of animals would you like?" Oliver thought for a moment, his little brow furrowed in concentration. "Lions," he said finally. "Lions are brave." "Lions it is," Jade promised. "The bravest pancake lions you've ever seen." As father and son prepared to leave, Ethan reached for his wallet, but Jade shook her head. "This one's on the house," she said. "Some things are more important than money." Ethan nodded, understanding that he'd just witnessed something priceless. As they walked toward the door, Oliver turned back one last time. "Bye, Jade," he said, his voice clear and strong. "Thank you for the animals." The diner erupted in spontaneous applause as the door closed behind them, but Jade barely heard it. She was already planning tomorrow's pancake menagerie, unaware that she just changed the course of 3 lives forever. 3 days later, Jade was wiping down tables during the afternoon lull when she noticed a familiar figure through the window. Ethan Rhodes sat in his sleek black Mercedes in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. He'd been there for 20 minutes, just sitting, staring at the diner's neon sign. When he finally walked through the door, Jade could see the weight he carried, not just in his expensive suit or the designer briefcase, but in the way his shoulders sagged with exhaustion that ran deeper than sleepless nights. "Mr. Rhodes," Jade greeted him warmly. "Where's Oliver today?" "At school," Ethan replied, his voice hoarse. "He's been talking to his teachers, his classmates. They can't believe it. Neither can I." He slid into the same corner booth, but this time he faced the window, as if he couldn't bear to look at the spot where his world had shifted on its axis. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly. "About what happened here. About Oliver." Jade poured him coffee without being asked, noting the tremor in his hands as he lifted the cup. "He's a special boy. Smart as a whip, from what I can tell." "You have no idea," Ethan laughed bitterly. "He builds computers from scratch. Reads at a college level. Understands quantum physics better than most adults. But until 3 days ago, he hadn't spoken a word to another human being in 2 years. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. 2 years? Jade asked softly, sliding into the booth across from him. Ethan nodded, his eyes distant. It started after his mother died. Car accident. Oliver was in the back seat, saw everything. The doctor said it was trauma, that he'd speak when he was ready. But months turned into years and His voice cracked. Jade reached across the table, her hand covering his briefly, a gesture so simple yet so foreign to a man who'd spent years drowning in clinical assessments and professional distance. "I've spent over $3 million, Ethan continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "The best child psychologists in the country. Speech therapists who charge more per hour than most people make in a month. I flew him to specialists in Switzerland, Germany, Japan. Experimental treatments, cutting-edge technology, brain scans that cost more than most people's cars." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like an endless list of contacts. Dr. Martinez at Johns Hopkins. Dr. Chen at Stanford. Dr. Williamson at the Mayo Clinic. I have their numbers memorized. Oliver's been poked, prodded, tested, and analyzed by the best minds in medicine. But none of them could reach him, Jade said gently. None of them even tried to understand him. Ethan's voice grew bitter. They saw a case study, a puzzle to solve. They gave him labels: selective mutism, complex PTSD, autism spectrum disorder. They prescribed medications that turned him into a zombie. They recommended residential facilities where he'd be better equipped to handle his condition. He set down his phone with shaking hands. I became obsessed with fixing him. I read every study, attended every conference, consulted with every expert. I turned our home into a sterile treatment center. Schedules, therapies, interventions. I forgot he was my son. I forgot he was just a little boy who missed his mother. Jade felt her heart breaking for both of them. And then? Then you made him pancake animals, Ethan said, his voice cracking again. You didn't have degrees hanging on your wall or credentials after your name. You didn't run tests or analyze his behavior patterns. You just saw him. I saw a child who needed someone to play with him, Jade replied simply. How? The question came out like a plea. How did you know what to do? Jade was quiet for a moment, remembering her cousin Marcus and the years of learning to speak his language. My cousin Marcus. He's autistic. When I was growing up, everyone kept trying to make him fit into their world. But I learned that sometimes you have to step into someone else's world first. You have training then? Background in. I have love, Jade interrupted gently. And patience. And the understanding that different doesn't mean broken. Marcus taught me that the most brilliant minds often speak in different languages. Oliver's been talking all along, just not in words. Ethan stared at her, this young woman who'd accomplished in minutes what armies of specialists couldn't do in years. You're telling me that $3 million worth of expertise couldn't match what you learned from your cousin? I'm telling you that sometimes the most expensive solutions miss the most important ingredient, Jade said. Connection. Oliver didn't need to be fixed. He needed to be understood. "I've been such a fool," Ethan whispered, burying his face in his hands. "All this time, I thought I was fighting for him. But I was fighting against who he is." "You're not a fool," Jade said firmly. "You're a father who loves his son. You did everything you thought was right. Sometimes the hardest part of helping someone is learning when to stop trying to change them and start accepting them." Ethan looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but clearer than they'd been in years. "He's been asking for you. Every day. He wants to know when we're coming back to see Jade and the pancake animals. Then bring him back." Jade smiled. "I promised him lions, remember? And I always keep my promises." As Ethan prepared to leave, he turned back one last time. "I don't know how to thank you. Just love him," Jade said. "Exactly as he is. That's all any of us really need." Walking back to his car, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope of a man trying to fix what he thought was broken, but the quiet, steady hope of a father who'd finally learned to listen to his son's silence and hear the universe of words waiting underneath. 1 week later, Jade was counting the morning's tips when she noticed a familiar Mercedes pull into the parking lot. But this time, Ethan Rhodes stepped out alone, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing an expression that was part nervous energy, part determined resolve. The afternoon crowd was thin, just a few regulars nursing coffee and the remnants of their lunch. Ethan chose the counter instead of his usual booth, perching on the red vinyl stool like a man preparing for the most important pitch of his life. "Coffee?" Jade asked, already reaching for the pot. "Actually," Ethan said, his fingers drumming against the counter, "I was hoping we could talk. About something important." Jade poured his coffee anyway, noting the way he kept glancing at the portfolio beside him. "Where's Oliver today?" "School," Ethan smiled, a real smile this time. "He's been telling his teacher about the pancake animals. She thinks he's making it up." He laughed softly. "She's never seen him so animated. He's drawing pictures of them, writing stories about their adventures." "That's wonderful," Jade said, genuinely pleased. "He's got such an imagination." "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about," Ethan said, opening the portfolio. Inside were architectural drawings, business plans, and what looked like financial projections. "I've been thinking about what you said. About connection, about understanding. And I've been watching Oliver these past few days, really watching him." He spread out one of the drawings, a detailed floor plan of what looked like a restaurant. "Tell me, Jade. If you could have anything in the world, what would it be?" The question caught her off guard. I don't know." "Why?" "Humor me," Ethan said, his eyes intense. "If money wasn't an issue, if you could do anything, be anything, what would make you happy?" Jade wiped her hands on her apron, thinking. "I guess I'd want to help people. Kids, especially. Kids like Oliver who see the world differently." She paused, embarrassed by her own honesty. "I used to dream about opening a place where they could just be themselves. Where being different was celebrated instead of criticized." "A restaurant?" Ethan prompted. "A cafe," Jade said wistfully. "Somewhere warm and welcoming. With good food and patient staff. Maybe a play area where kids could be loud or quiet, messy or neat, whatever they needed to be." She shook her head. "But that's just dreaming. I don't have the money or the business experience or—" "What if you did?" Ethan interrupted. Jade stared at him. "What do you mean?" Ethan turned the architectural drawing toward her. "This is a cafe. 1,500 square feet in the new downtown development. The main dining area flows into a sensory-friendly play space, soft lighting, noise-dampening materials, texture walls for kids who need to touch things. There's a quiet corner for children who get overwhelmed, and an active area for those who need to move." Jade's mouth fell open as she studied the plans. It was exactly what she'd envisioned, down to the reading nook and the art station. "How did you?" "I hired a team of specialists," Ethan said. "Real specialists this time." child development experts, occupational therapists, sensory integration specialists. They designed a space where kids like Oliver can thrive. This is beautiful, Jade whispered, running her finger over the drawings. But I don't understand. Why are you showing me this? Ethan reached into his portfolio and pulled out a thick folder. Because I want you to have it. The cafe, the equipment, the initial operating capital. Everything. Jade's hands stilled. I'm sorry, what? I want to fund your dream, Ethan said simply. You gave me my son back. You showed me that love and understanding are worth more than all the money I've spent trying to fix what wasn't broken. This is my way of saying thank you. Mr. Rhodes, I can't. Ethan, he corrected. And yes, you can. You changed Oliver's life in 10 minutes with pancake animals. Imagine what you could do with a whole cafe designed for kids like him. Jade shook her head, overwhelmed. This is too much. I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything about running a business. You know about understanding people, Ethan said. You know about patience and creativity and making children feel safe. That's worth more than any MBA. He pulled out another set of papers. I've already spoken with a team of consultants. They'll handle the business side while you focus on what you do best, connecting with people. But why? Jade asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would you do this for me? Ethan was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee. Because you didn't see a broken child when you looked at my son. You saw a little boy who needed someone to play with him. You gave him back his voice, and in doing so, you gave me back my son. He looked up, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Oliver talks about you constantly. He's drawing pictures of the cafe he wants to visit, Jade's place he calls it. He's already planning the pancake animals he wants to show other kids. I don't know what to say, Jade admitted. Say you'll think about it, Ethan said, closing the portfolio and sliding it across the counter. Take the plans home. Read through everything. And remember, some dreams are too important to stay dreams forever. As he stood to leave, Jade called after him. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? Ethan turned back with a smile. You made my son laugh for the first time in 2 years with pancake batter and chocolate syrup. Trust me, you're more than good enough. After he left, Jade sat alone at the counter, staring at the portfolio that contained her dreams made manifest. Through the window, she could see Ethan's car pulling away, and she wondered if this was real or just another beautiful dream that would disappear with the morning light. But the plans were real. The opportunity was real. And for the first time in years, Jade allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, dreams weren't just for other people. Words spread through Millbrook faster than butter on hot toast. By the time Jade arrived for her shift the next morning, half the town seemed to know about the Millionaire's offer to their local waitress. Is it true? Demanded Mrs. Patterson, the town's unofficial gossip coordinator, before Jade had even tied her apron. Did that rich man really offer to buy you a restaurant? Jade poured coffee with shaking hands, trying to ignore the way conversations hushed when she passed tables. The portfolio sat heavy in her locker, filled with possibilities that felt both thrilling and terrifying. It's not exactly like that, she murmured, but Mrs. Patterson wasn't listening. Well, I think it's wonderful, declared Harold from his usual corner booth. He'd been coming to Sunrise Diner since before Jade was born, and his approval carried weight in the small community. Girl's got a gift with people. Always has. But not everyone shared Harold's enthusiasm. Must be nice, Sarah muttered, slamming down a stack of plates with unnecessary force. Some of us have been working here for 5 years without any rich knights in shining armor riding to our rescue. It's not like that, Jade said quietly, but Sarah's resentment hung in the air like smoke. At the hardware store across the street, Jade could see a cluster of men gesturing toward the diner. She caught fragments of conversation throughout the day, whispers that followed her like shadows. Bet she's sleeping with him. Money doesn't just fall from the sky. What's a black girl gonna do with a fancy cafe anyway? The words stung, each one a small cut that accumulated throughout the day. By afternoon, Jade felt raw and exposed, questioning everything she thought she knew about her community. Her friend Lisa stopped by during her lunch break, sliding into the counter seat with the determined expression of someone on a mission. "Don't listen to them," she said without preamble. "Half this town's been stuck in the same rut for 20 years, and they can't stand seeing someone actually get a chance to climb out." "Maybe they're right, though," Jade said, mechanically wiping down the already clean counter. "Maybe I don't deserve this. Maybe I am getting in over my head." "Deserve?" Lisa's voice rose. "Girl, you've been taking care of everyone else since you were 18. Your grandmother, your cousin Marcus, half the customers in this place. When's the last time someone took care of you?" Before Jade could answer, the bell above the door chimed. Ethan walked in with Oliver, and the boy's face lit up when he saw her. "Jade!" Oliver called out, his voice clear and happy. "I drew you a picture." He thrust a crayon drawing across the counter, a colorful rendering of what looked like a cafe filled with smiling children and, unmistakably, pancake animals on every table. "This is beautiful, sweetheart," Jade said, her voice thick with emotion. "Tell me about it." "It's your cafe," Oliver explained earnestly. "And these are all the kids who come to eat pancake lions and bears. And this one here," he pointed to a small figure in the corner. "That's Tommy from my class. He doesn't talk much either, but he likes animals." The innocence in Oliver's voice cut through Jade's doubts like sunlight through clouds. This wasn't about her. It wasn't about what the town thought or whether she deserved anything. It was about children like Oliver who needed a safe place to be themselves. "Oliver's been talking about the cafe nonstop," Ethan said softly. "He's already planning what kind of animals to make for his friends." "Has he now?" Jade smiled, feeling something settle in her chest. "He wants to help," Ethan continued. "He has ideas about colors and textures, about what would make kids feel comfortable. Turns out, living with sensory challenges makes him quite the expert on sensory-friendly design." That evening, Jade sat in her small apartment with the portfolio spread across her kitchen table. Her phone had been ringing all day, some calls offering congratulations, others less kind. She'd stopped answering after the third person asked what she'd done to earn such an opportunity. But Oliver's drawing was taped to her refrigerator, and every time she looked at it, she remembered why this mattered. The knock on her door was gentle but persistent. She opened it to find Mrs. Chen from the flower shop, holding a small bouquet of sunflowers. "These are for you," the elderly woman said in her accented English. "For courage. My grandson David, he has the autism too. Maybe someday he could come to your cafe?" More neighbors appeared throughout the evening. Mr. Rodriguez with his daughter who struggled with anxiety. The Johnsons with their twin boys who had ADHD. One by one, they shared their stories, their hopes for their children who didn't quite fit the world's narrow definitions of normal. "We need this," whispered Amy Thompson, whose 8-year-old son hadn't spoken since his father died in Afghanistan. "We need someone who understands." By the time the last visitor left, Jade understood something crucial. The voices of doubt and jealousy were loud, but they belonged to fear. The voices of hope were quieter, but they belonged to love. She picked up her phone and dialed Ethan's number. "I want to do this," she said when he answered. "I want to build something beautiful for kids like Oliver. For all of them." "I was hoping you'd say that," Ethan replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "When do we start?" Outside her window, the lights of Millbrook twinkled like stars, and for the first time in her life, Jade felt like she belonged among them. 6 months later, autumn sunlight filtered through the large windows of Pancake Whisper, casting dancing shadows across the warm wooden floors. Jade stood before the pristine kitchen, her heart hammering against her ribs as she surveyed the cafe that had once existed only in her dreams. The space was a masterpiece of thoughtful design. Soft lighting created pools of comfort throughout the dining area, while the sensory-friendly play zone hummed with quiet activity. Textured walls invited small hands to explore, while cozy reading nooks offered refuge for overwhelmed souls. Every corner whispered welcome to children who had spent their lives being told they were too loud, too quiet, too much, or not enough. "You ready for this?" asked Marcus, her cousin, who'd driven 3 hours to be here for opening day. He wore his finest suit and a grin that stretched from ear to ear. "I think so," Jade replied, smoothing her new apron, deep blue with pancake whisper, embroidered in golden thread. "What if nobody comes?" "Are you kidding?" Marcus laughed, pointing toward the window. "Look outside." A line of families stretched around the block. Parents held hands with children of all ages, some bouncing with excitement, others clinging shyly to their caregivers. Jade recognized many faces from that evening months ago when they'd quietly shared their hopes with her. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was set for 10 o'clock. Mayor Williams stood ready with the ceremonial scissors, flanked by local news crews who'd caught wind of the unusual story. But Jade's eyes were focused on two figures making their way through the crowd. Ethan approached with Oliver beside him, but this wasn't the silent, anxious child from the diner. This Oliver walked with confidence, his eyes bright with anticipation. He wore a small chef's hat that Jade had given him the week before, declaring him her official pancake animal consultant. "Are you nervous?" Ethan asked when they reached her. "Terrified," Jade admitted with a laugh. "Good terrified, though." The past 6 months had transformed all three of them. Ethan had stepped back from the daily grind of his tech empire, choosing instead to spend mornings with Oliver and afternoons learning about child development and sensory integration. The desperate, exhausted man from the diner had been replaced by a father who understood that being present was more valuable than any treatment plan. Oliver had blossomed beyond anyone's wildest expectations. He attended a new school that celebrated neurodiversity, made friends with children who appreciated his unique way of seeing the world, and had become something of a local celebrity for his pancake animal expertise. "Jade," Oliver said, tugging on her apron with the familiarity of old friendship. "I brought you something." He handed her a carefully folded piece of paper, another drawing, but this one was different. Instead of just the cafe, it showed Jade standing behind the counter with her arms spread wide, surrounded by dozens of children and families. At the bottom, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for helping kids like me feel special." Jade's vision blurred as she knelt to Oliver's level. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is the most beautiful gift anyone's ever given me. Ready to cut some ribbon?" Mayor Williams called out, and the crowd pressed closer. As Jade took the scissors, she felt a small hand slip into hers. Oliver stood beside her, his other hand reaching for his father. The three of them faced the red ribbon together, an unlikely family bound not by blood, but by the understanding that love comes in many forms. "On the count of 3, the mayor announced. 1, 2. "Wait," Oliver said, his clear voice carrying across the crowd. He looked up at Jade with serious eyes. "Thank you, Jade, for seeing me when nobody else could." The words hit Jade like a gentle wave, washing away 6 months of doubt and fear. "Thank you, Oliver, for teaching me that the most important things in life can't be bought or sold. They have to be given freely." 3, the mayor shouted, and together they cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in cheers as the doors of Pancake Whisper opened for the first time. Children rushed toward the play area while parents settled into comfortable chairs, many wiping away tears as they watched their kids explore a space designed specifically for them. Oliver led the charge to the kitchen, where Jade had prepared her first batch of pancake animals for the cafe. Lions, elephants, butterflies, and dragons, an entire menagerie waiting to bring joy to children who understood that being different was just another way of being wonderful. As the morning wore on, Jade watched families settle into the space like they'd been waiting their whole lives to belong somewhere. A non-speaking teenager communicated through sign language with her patient server. A boy with ADHD raced around the designated active play area without a single adult telling him to calm down. Twin girls with autism found perfect peace in the quiet corner, building elaborate structures with specially designed blocks. "You did it," Ethan said, appearing at her elbow with 2 cups of coffee. "You created something magical." Jade looked around at the filled tables, The laughing children, the relaxed parents who weren't constantly apologizing for their kids' behavior. Oliver sat in the center of it all, teaching other children how to make perfect pancake bunnies, his voice strong and confident. "We did it," she corrected. "All of us. Together." As the sun set on Pancake Whisper's first day, Jade realized that sometimes the most extraordinary things begin with the simplest acts of kindness. A waitress who saw potential instead of problems. A father who learned to listen instead of fix. A child who found his voice through pancake animals and never looked back. And in a small corner booth, 3 unlikely friends sat together, planning tomorrow's menu and dreaming of all the children yet to discover that they were perfect exactly as they were.